Hello everyone and welcome back to Animation Pilgrimage, where Shawn and I review every single theatrically released animated film in chronological order. I'm Sunil.
And I'm Shawn.
And today we are looking at Disney's 1967 The Jungle Book, based on the book of the same name by Rudyard Kipling. Oh boy.
Are you okay?
Nope.
All right. Wow, this was a breath of fresh. You passed it on to me.
I thought you were doing it on purpose to make fun of me. I was like, oh, really? We're going to play this game? And then
No.
you're just like...
This movie was a breath of fresh air.
There you go.
Holy cow.
Compared to everything else we've had to watch recently.
Everything else we've watched since 1965.
Yeah.
Or like the beginning of 1965. The second half here of the 60s.
Yeah.
Like, I've already categorized the first half and put it away. I don't remember half the things we watched in that. But the second half is just like, it's been a lot of, well, that happened type of movies. And this one...
From people who, like, don't know how to put a movie together.
Mm-hmm. And this one is... I still won't say to the quality of a lot of earlier Disney films.
Mm-hmm.
But still has fantastic animation, charming characters, beautiful backgrounds, and a cohesive story, even if there's not a whole lot there.
Yeah. Yeah. This is one of those Disney classics that people look back on both fondly and with a bit of, is it really a classic though?
Like, is it actually as good as we think it might be?
Well, it's in one of those weird spots because it sits right on the edge of the Disney Silver Age and the Disney Dark Ages. And in many ways, this movie has a lot of qualities of both eras. Mm-hmm. And certainly leads into the Disney Dark Age pretty well. Like there's a lot of things in this film that are problems in the other Disney Dark Age films. But there's also some classic elements here that you see from the Silver Age of Disney as well. The music being written by the Sherman Brothers and all being like really catchy, especially the King Louie song and the Bare Necessities. Like, those are Disney staples.
Yes.
The characterization and character animation is really great. The voice acting for the characters is great. The backgrounds are fantastic. There's still a liveliness to the animation that gets a little bit lost when we get into the Dark Age of Disney animation. The story is probably...
the weakest part?
Probably the weakest of the Disney Silver Age films, except for potentially The Sword and the Stone.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we want to do a incredibly brief plot summary because it's really easy to do?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, Bagheera, the Black Panther, is wandering through the jungle of India, because this takes place in India,
mm-hmm.
and he comes...
And oh my god, I just want to point out here, the introduction panning shots of
just jungle?
The jungle are gorgeous. Like, these are beautiful. I love, like, the introduction of this film.
Okay. And,
Go
like,
ahead.
the mysterious music helps add to it.
Mm-hmm.
Bagheera is going through the woods, and he finds a little human cub, a man cub, as this movie likes to refer to him.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of leaving it or killing it, he's warmed in the heart by its adorable presence. But he doesn't think he should raise it, so he takes it to a local...
Well, he can't.
Yeah.
He can't raise it, so he takes it to a wolf pack.
Who just had a new litter of pups.
Mm-hmm.
And the mother warms up to it immediately, and the father gets one over as well. So
The important thing is that he takes it to a nearby wolf pack because Mowgli needs food.
yeah, he needs food now as
and the
compared
nearest
to
village, like the nearest man village, is days, miles away.
several days away. So that's why he takes it to the wolf pack instead. The wolves raise him, and then we flash forward to like 10 years. Is he supposed to be about 10? 8, 10, child.
I feel like he's supposed to be closer to like 6, like 6 or 7. But Disney has a problem with like making characters look older than what they are. It's kind of the Peter Pan thing all over again.
Right, because he's supposed to be 10, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's
He
obviously
looks
15.
Yeah.
Okay, either way, he is now child, and his name is Mowgli.
Mm-hmm.
Mowgli is living a happy life when the forest is made aware of the fact that Shere Khan, the tiger, is coming back into this area. And Shere Khan hates humans. And so he heard that there's a man cub living in the woods, and he's going to find and kill him.
I mean, he doesn't hear it at this point.
Well, they make the assumption that he's going to find out pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because a man cub living in the woods the forest is a pretty...
It's pretty big news for the animals.
Yeah. So the wolf pack as a whole decides, yeah, we can't keep him.
Yeah.
We can't face Shere Khan. So he's got to go. And Bagheera is still around. He drops in every now and again, and he's like, hey, I can take him. I'll take him to the man village. So he tries to do so, and Mowgli is like, I want to live in the woods because I lived here my whole life, so I'm just going to obstinately go against you even though I have no idea what the man village is.
Yeah.
So that's what he does. And then we have many mishaps with him running into Kaa the snake, who wants to eat him, the elephant troop, who exist and are militarized. He runs into Baloo.
And Baloo wants to adopt him to be his baby bear cub.
And Baloo is like a total slacker.
Yeah, he's
character.
a jungle bum.
He's like, everything's cool and like just live off of the bare necessities of what you need in life, and it's all great. And Bagheera's like, fine, I'll leave him with you because he won't listen to me. And that doesn't go well because Mowgli immediately gets captured by the monkeys, who take him to King Louie, who is an orangutan, and he wants to become human and needs the secret of fire.
He wants to become human, aka he wants to possess man's weapons.
He wants man's weapons and stroll right into town and be just like the other men. He's tired of monkeying around. Oh, ooby-doo. That song is too catchy.
It's really good. They save Mowgli from King Louie, though.
Yeah.
Because Mowgli doesn't even know how to make fire anyway.
Yeah, Baloo and Bagheera save him.
Yeah.
And then that night, Bagheera convinces Baloo that Mowgli has to go back to the village. It's not safe.
Which leads to like a very impressive character scene between both Bagheera and Baloo, and then transitions perfectly into Baloo talking to Mowgli.
Yes, and also while the first conversation is going on, the background is ever so slightly just getting lighter and lighter, and they have so many different shades of background color as they show the progression into morning. Mm-hmm. And Baloo at
and this is a very in general, there's times where this movie is very dated because the movie takes time to just let the background artists and animators flex their skills.
They're just swagging.
Yeah, and that's completely lost on a modern audience because a modern audience doesn't realize how difficult these effects are to pull off.
There are multiple scenes of Mowgli just wandering by himself through the forest, interacting with the background numerous times without cutting.
Yeah.
And it's that's a difficult thing to do. There's a reason a lot of people don't even try.
And
because
to be
it's
honest,
so much money.
Yeah, well, it's really difficult to do. You've really got to have great communication between your layout, and your background and your animators. Just working all together and communicating to make that kind of shot work. And, you know, it's something that unless you're like Shawn and I and you've been watching these movies in order, you don't notice that kind of effect because we see it all the time now.
Yeah, it's like, oh, the background is just another malleable piece of 3D animation, right?
And,
wrong.
Well, and even later on in Disney history, you know, they'll have...
Two-dimensional.
Yeah, in 2D films, they'll do this sometimes, and it's easier to pull off then.
Yes. Because technology gets better.
Yeah. But, you know, when you're actually watching these films in order, you're like, ooh, I haven't seen something like that.
Or, like, not to this extent.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, to continue with the plot summary, Baloo finally decides that, yes, Mowgli has to go back. Mowgli ain't having none of this. And he runs off again. And this time he gets captured by Kaa again. But about this time, Shere Khan has come back into the forest.
And he's learned that Mowgli is there.
From the ineptitudes of the Elephant Brigade.
Yeah.
So he's interrogating Kaa, which, hilariously enough, saves Mowgli from dying.
Yeah. And oh god, if we're going to talk about Disney flexing, we need to talk about Shere Khan.
Well, both of these characters.
Yeah, both Kaa and Shere Khan. But Shere Khan is...
I was going to wait on a lot of like this awesome flexing and stuff until we get through the story because it's very short.
It is very short. Go ahead.
Okay. So Shere Khan, like hilariously enough, this saves Mowgli's life because he's able to shake off the hypnosis. And after Shere Khan leaves, he tosses Kaa out of the tree for a second time and is able to get away. Again. And is able to get away where he wanders out into a totally deserted...
A barren wasteland.
Where he runs into some very friendly vultures who are a quartet.
They're like a Beatles parody.
Yeah, is pretty clear. But they they're like, well, we're out of here once Shere Khan shows up.
Yeah, they sing a song about being Mowgli's friend, and then as soon as
Friends forever, and they're like, nope. Nope forever.
Nope forever.
I mean, they do say, friend, run.
Yeah, like they try, but they're also like, there's no way we're standing up to Shere Khan.
It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, they do. Near the end, like, once other people are there and fighting, they're like, all right, we'll fight now, too.
Yeah.
But, like, they start the fight, and then Baloo manages to find them in time and fights off Shere Khan, and Mowgli manages to use, like... The storm starts and lightning strikes a nearby tree and he grabs the now burning tree branches and ties it to Shere Khan's tail, and Shere Khan, being afraid of guns and fire...
Well, I mean,
he's afraid of man.
He's afraid of man, but it's also just like an old myth of tigers' fear of fire. Like, I'm not sure if that's just an Indonesian, like, myth. I mean, obviously, most animals are afraid of fire.
Yeah.
But, like, specifically, tigers are always associated with this fear of fire. Similar to, like, elephants being afraid of mice or something like that.
Okay.
Which is why it's always so impressive when, like, circus acts get tigers to jump through a ring of fire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, either way, he ties a burning branch to his tail, and... You wouldn't like a burning branch bit tied to your tail either, so he books it out of there, trying to get away from the fire. Shere Khan defeated.
Defeated and humiliated.
Humiliated and defeated, yes. Very important.
So, it all seems like all's gonna be well in the jungle, and Mowgli can stay, because, hey, Shere Khan's gone.
But Baloo's dead.
We have a fake out of Baloo dying. And there's actually, I like the lines Bagheera says about, you know, like, oh...
How he's such a good guy, even though the whole movie's just like, you're a layabout and a slob and all this stuff. And then he's like, how dare you play this trick on me for not being dead?
Well,
I'm glad you're not dead.
I like Baloo just being like, oh, come on, Baggy, keep going. That was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
My mother never said nicer things to me.
I wish my mom was here to hear this.
Yeah.
But either way, it turns out they're actually right next to the man village. And once you know it, there's a pretty girl, and Mowgli is entranced by the pretty girl, and she totally manipulates him into following her into the village.
Uh-huh.
And everything is A-okay.
Yep. And I mean, I love this ending because you just get to see Baloo be like,
What are you doing?
what the hell?
Come back!
And Bagheera's like, no.
Let him go.
Go.
And then Mowgli just gives this like super cheesy grin.
Like,
And
just shrug.
he walks into the village and the movie's over.
Yep.
As Bagheera and Baloo walk off singing the bare necessities.
Yep.
And that's the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, now what do we want to talk about? Do we want to talk about swag or
Swag.
Where do we go from here? Because there's a lot of things to discuss with this movie.
Well, we did just talk about the plot, so I feel like talking about the story makes sense.
Okay, there's not a lot, as you can tell. It's a lot of just kind of padding as they just wander from here to there, but it honestly works.
Yeah, it works for the most part. The biggest problem
Ooh, yes. Okay.
with this movie is
The message.
yeah, the message is kind of cluttered, and we can go into this a little later, but things were kind of hectic at the Disney studio, and so I'm thinking this story did not get as many passes.
Many passes and rewrites as it probably should have.
Because
As it currently stands, one of the strongest messages that you can get out of this is not necessarily a great message. And that message is separation of the species, of the races.
yeah, it's
of
like a pro-segregation.
Pro-segregation of individualized groups of people. Because Bagheera is all of a mind of, a man cub can't live in the forest. He should be with his own kind. And you wouldn't marry a panther now, would you, Baloo?
Yeah, it's
And-
specifically the "you wouldn't marry a panther, would you, Baloo?" line that really just kind of like
Cements the fact of like, oh, that's like the strongest message you can get out of this, and that's not a great message.
and that's not the message I think they're going for.
No, I don't think that's what they're going for either.
But it's definitely there.
It's definitely there, and that's
and that
a
is
very
definitely a message you can easily take out of it.
and that's not an okay message.
Yeah.
But if that is the message that they're going for, Baloo is a great guy. Because
Yeah,
he's like, his response to, you would never marry a panther, and he immediately responds with, I don't know, none have ever asked me.
Yeah.
As in like, heck, I don't care.
Yeah, but Baloo's opinion on things is something to be mocked, not
Yeah.
something to live up to.
Yeah.
Which,
So, again, it's not,
because Bagheera is the voice of reason in this film.
or at least he's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's his role
Mm-hmm.
in the film. And what I think instead the movie is going for is a lot more literal of
Yeah,
people don't belong in the forest.
with literal wild animals.
Yeah. Which, I mean, is just kind of the message that they had in Bambi.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Told in a
lot
different way.
sloppier here.
Yes.
And that's another thing with Mowgli. Like, that's why I picture Mowgli as supposed to be more of like a 6 to 7 year old.
Because he's just being an obstinate child as compared to a more well-informed person who is like, no, I am actively choosing to live with different people.
Yeah, this is why I don't like the idea of Mowgli staying in the jungle and getting his way on this, because I don't feel like it's like Mowgli's literally a child. Like, he's not coming from the perspective of, oh, well, I've experienced both, or I know enough now to know that I want to stay in the jungle and I want to stay with my family. Mowgli isn't even concerned about staying with the wolf pack. Mowgli's just an obstinate child who wants to stay in the jungle. Because the jungle is all he knows.
That's all he knows, and people are telling him he has to do something else, so he's digging in his heels and saying no. Mm-hmm. Which is what most children would do.
Yeah, and...
in a relatively similar situation.
What the movie does do well, in all occasions except for in the climax, is illustrate how dangerous the jungle is for Mowgli. Mm-hmm. Like, Mowgli narrowly escapes being eaten, killed, stomped on, getting his head smashed in, smashed, like... Constantly. But then the climax happens, and he just kind of defeats the tiger fairly easily. Mm-hmm. Although it is, like, really threatening for the first, like, 10 seconds. And then you're like, oh no, this is kind of just turned into wacky hijinks, and he's fine.
Yeah.
It's like, I think if Shere Khan wasn't completely humiliated at the end of this film, Mowgli going back to the village would feel better, because you're like, oh god, good, that boy is finally safe.
It was like, but otherwise, like, oh, the tiger is still out there. Mm-hmm. He could still get him, type of thing.
Yeah.
But no, he's just like, no, Shere Khan is done.
Yeah. Speaking of Shere Khan...
Now you want to talk about swaggin'.
Yeah. So, Milk Call animated Shere Khan.
And this is a gorgeous beast.
Oh, God.
Every time he's on screen.
Oh, the animation is so good. The animation up to the point where Shere Khan comes in is all, like, good. Mm-hmm. Specifically, the stuff with Baloo and Mowgli is probably some of the best animation.
I actually am quite a big fan of King Louie.
Yeah. Yeah. King Louie's animation's really good, too.
Because, like, they just go ham on him using all of his limbs to do all these different things. And you can still get his personality. It's not just monkey doing things with hands. It's lazy, very self-assured monkey doing things with all of his hands. Mm-hmm.
And the animation of Ka is also really good.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like there's just a lot of things in the first act of the film that aren't spectacular compared to a lot of other things. Like, Bagheera's animation's never fantastic, and it reuses animation all the time whenever he's, like, jumping off screen or something like that.
That's something we should cover.
Yeah.
That this movie does, yes, indeed, reuse tons of animation, both from this movie and ripping animation from previous movies. Like, right there at the beginning with the wolf pack, the wolf pups are very clearly just redrawn Dalmatians.
Dalmatian puppies.
From
There's
100
also
Dalmatians.
Animation reused from Sword in the Stone of like Wart when he's petting dogs, and then Mowgli when he's petting the wolves. There's also animation reused from Wind in the Willows when they're trying to get the deed, and that's reused in the King Louie scrap battle where they're trying to get Mowgli. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's a lot of reused animation.
And the reason is because Wolfgang Reitherman directed this film.
And he loves doing that.
And Wooly was of the mindset that, hey, if we've already done this animation, why should we do it again? Even though it cost just as much money and took just as much time, if not more time,
than doing original stuff.
To go back into the archives,
find this old stuff,
that animation, pull it back out, repurpose it.
It's like, because you're still redrawing the whole thing, and you might have to make slight adjustments to, like, make it work for the new scene or stuff like that. So it's like, it still takes just as much time. But at the time, that was not necessarily readily apparent. it was one of those, is it cheaper? Is it not? We're not sure. But now here, way in the future, we can look back and look and say, yes, it was the exact same pretty much.
Well, and a lot of people want to look back at it and go, like, oh, this is lazy, bad, or manipulative. And I don't think it's any of those things.
Because that wasn't the intent.
Because we just talked about what a pain in the ass it was to do this as compared to actually just creating a new scene. Mm-hmm. It's just there are no other companies that have this animation library Disney has.
So they can't do it. So
to them, it was just like, hey, this is a resource we have. Why don't we use this resource? Mm-hmm. And if anybody even notices, because who is going to notice? Because these movies aren't being printed on VHS, DVD, digital copies. These
are the only time you see them is when they come out in theaters.
Yeah, these movies are only coming out in theaters. And so if people even do notice this, they don't have any proof to back it up, and they can just be like, oh, well, it's an Easter egg to this other film we've done. Mm-hmm. There's no malicious intent behind reusing animation. It's just something that nowadays we can look back on and be like, all right, that's weird.
Thing. Okay.
Yeah.
That being said, this movie does have quite a bit of original animation, and the new animation that it does make is really gorgeous.
Oh, and on the subject of reused animation,
okay,
they reused animation that they did for this movie in this movie multiple times too.
Yes,
so not just reusing animation from old films, they reuse animation in this film as well.
In fact, Mowgli walks through and trips over a thing and then pushes aside something multiple times, facing different directions. I think he does it at least 3 times in this movie.
Yeah.
The same exact animation in completely different backgrounds, but he still interacts with things in those backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure Bagheera, jumps off the screen, jumps off to go run somewhere, the same way, several times. And
Kaa falls out of the tree the same way twice, and then slinks away the same way twice.
Yeah.
That being said, him slinking away and his body just all discombobulated and then lurching all over the place.
Back out.
That looks so good.
Yeah, I don't blame him for showing it twice, because damn.
I love looking at that, because every piece is moving at a slightly different speed, and it's good. Look at this, guys.
That's impressive animation.
I love it. Mm-hmm. And Shere Khan. Do you want to talk about Shere Khan?
Shere Khan is so good. What is there to say? Look at it. This is easily the best animation in the movie.
It's so subtle and precise.
Uh-huh.
And they animated all of those stripes. And they don't move.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Uh-huh. And the
sheer presence of this guy.
The vocal performance and the character animation just mesh so perfectly. Mm-hmm. Shere Khan feels so intimidating.
Even though he's only in the movie for the last 20 minutes of it.
Yeah.
He's so good. He's such a presence.
Just and little character things that he does, especially in the interrogation of Kaa, where he's just talking to Kaa, and Kaa is sweating bullets, as Shere Khan just pulls out his claws and is rubbing the bottom of his chin, and then just picking his nose. How much more intimidating can Shere Khan get? Mm-hmm. Without doing anything.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything in this movie if you actually look at it, but
yeah.
He is the perfect example of just sheer intimidation through swagger. Mm-hmm. On a different note, I just want to talk about my personal experiences with this movie.
Yeah.
Because I think this is an important thing to talk about. I watched this movie a number of times growing up, and it was never like one of my more favorite Disney films. In fact, it was like this over anything else. I would almost always choose whatever the other option was. Because it's like, I don't know, there's not really a lot there. I don't really care about any of these characters. Nothing draws me in. In fact, we even rewatched this movie
a year ago.
It wasn't a year ago. I'd say it was more like 4 or 5 years ago. Something like that. And we rewatched it, and I'm still of the mindset, it's like, it's fine, I guess. I don't really care. And it wasn't until watching it this time for Animation Pilgrimage, in the context of all the other movies coming out, I was like, wow, dang, okay, yes, this movie was actually pretty impressive. And I actually enjoyed the jokes, and I got into the characters so much more, and something about it this time just drew me in, and I really enjoyed myself this time.
Yeah, I think this movie's a lot better in the context of when it came out. And if you don't have, if you don't realize that, this movie is from the 60s, and this is what other movies in the 60s were like, it's pretty dull. And having that context helps quite a bit. It makes it feel a lot more action-packed, a lot funnier. The characterization just comes alive a lot stronger. And I'm kind of with you. This has never been a top-tier Disney film for me. But it's one that I always liked and more so appreciated because I knew some of the context behind it. Because I think it's really important to say that this film came out after Walt died.
Yeah. That's probably an important point to talk about. Walt Disney, the man.
Walt Disney died December 10th, 1966. So this movie came out a little under a year after his passing. And the studio is in a mess.
Is just a mess because no one was expecting him to die.
Yeah. He died unexpectedly from lung cancer. And
because cancer research wasn't really a huge thing at the time. And this man smoked buckets of cigarettes and cigars.
Walt was fairly secretive,
about his personal life.
Yeah, even if people knew he was going to the doctor, but they didn't know how serious it was until he was gone. And, you can read lots of reports of a lot of the staff that worked there at the time and, read their stories about how they talked to Walt one day like he was at the studio the day before.
And then the next day he was gone.
He was gone. And, and this movie is the last film Walt really had any kind of
touch or control on.
And even then, Walt had pretty much moved on to working on the parks at that point. And even past that, he had begun work on Epcot.
Which never came to fruition. But that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah. And... yeah.
Yeah. And this movie, most every single person will agree, is the end of the Silver Age. Moving forward, we're into the Disney Dark Ages.
Yeah. Where the animators just are making films mostly under the supervision of Woolie Reitherman as director. And we've only got a few 9 old men left working on these films. And they're all getting old.
Yeah, most of their times to shine have passed. Not to say we're done.
Yeah, not to say we won't see some great animation from them here in the future.
But, like, I don't know how many more films, like, there are any Nine Old Men on past this.
Quite a few.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just don't know.
Yeah, quite a few.
All right.
I mean, at least a few of the Nine Old Men were still there at the studio to pass the torch on to the Disney Renaissance animators.
Which didn't start until the very end of the 80s, right?
Well, yeah, like...
Halfway to the end?
Throughout the 80s.
Okay.
Because you get Renaissance animators that came into the studio at different points during the Dark Age.
That's true. Yep.
And then they go into it. Now, on a brighter note about this film was one of those that inspired a lot of the Disney Renaissance animators because it was a film that came out when they were young or
around the right age.
Released when they were young. Like Andreas Deja talks about how this film really inspired him to become an animator. Specifically the animation of Shere Khan. And yeah, like this movie in general is kind of seen as like one of the last best works of
the Nine Old Men.
Of the Nine Old Men team.
As a team, as compared to just like individualized stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that being said, not even half the old Nine Old Men worked on this movie, right?
No, I'm pretty sure we've got. I mean, Wooly's working as a director, but he's not animating anymore.
Yeah, Milt Kahl is animating.
Frank and Ollie, and they're going to be here for a while still. And I'm pretty sure John Lounsbury.
Well, that's 5. So that's over half.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but Mark Davis is working on Parks, and like Les Clark has moved on, and Eric Larson, I'm pretty sure, has moved on, and Ward has moved on from doing animation as well.
Okay.
But Ward, I think, is still around in the shorts. Well, the shorts department's kind of been closed down at this point. So I don't know. Ward is around, maybe? I would need to check my sources on that.
Okay. So,
but he's not working on feature films.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, overall, definitely a suggestion to watch this one.
Yeah.
Definitely check it out if you haven't. If you have before, maybe try rewatching it now in the context of when it came out. Especially if you've been keeping up with every single episode of Animation Pilgrimage. And like you've seen some of these other movies we've been seeing at this
I think
of these other years.
You know, I don't know that you'll get the same effect that Shawn and I had rewatching this film, but I hope that you get some of the same effect of being able to rewatch it now and appreciate more things about it.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like this movie gets unnecessary. Like, there's a group of people that like to criticize Disney movies, and I feel like this one gets overly criticized as being just like, oh, it's a boring old Disney film. And it's like, well, I mean, yeah, it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but there's still a lot here to like.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that actually wraps up this episode. It wasn't a super long one this time.
For a Disney episode, anyway.
Yeah, especially for a Disney episode. But either way, next time we are going to 2 countries at the same time with Asterisk the Gaul, which is a France/Belgium cross movie. Like, they both worked on it. I don't know how much was from both, but
all right.
It's very European.
It sounds very European. I'm here for it.
Yeah, all I know about it is it's based off of old comics.
Oh, cool.
This is a comic book character.
Neat.
So this is very much in the same veins as like the Flintstones or Hanna-Barbera.
Right. All right, well, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
I'll tear 'em limb from limb. I'll beat 'em. I'll... Yeah. Well, man, what a beat.
Will you stop that silly beat business and listen?